Caroline Brown, Alta Vista Drive. During the candidate period, when Kurt and Joe and Don were running, there were, I believe, 5 other candidates. It was the first time we'd had such a large array of candidates, and I thought, well, good for Sierra Madre. Finally, we will have some discussion about issues, because in the past, issues never got talked about much. It was sort of everything's hunky-dory in Sierra Madre. I don't know how many of you were here in this room the night of a candidate's night, but a question came from the audience. We had all, not all of us, a few of us had been to a number of the Downtown 101 sessions over the course of several months. A question came from the audience to all of the candidates sitting there. Do you think that the downtown specific plan should be put to a vote of the citizens? Don Watts was the first one sitting here, and he said yes. Joe was the second one, said yes. The third person was Tanya Torres, who said no. If you participated in the downtown specific plan, you already voted. This audience, and not this audience, but the audience then had to be quieted down for their boos. They found that statement so offensive. The rest of the people, Kurt said yes, 2 of the 3 of the other candidates weren't as familiar with the idea and sort of weren't sure how they were going to answer. That question became the watershed issue of that election. And the people who worked very hard for those 3 candidates, and Joe Mosca in particular, because you did get a large number of votes. And that number, however, has never driven who was next in line for being mayor or mayor pro tem. That's not a correct statement. It was, like I said, it was a watershed issue because it was sort of the first thing that ever brought an election so strongly in one direction. And here's where I think something happened to you, Joe. When we first met, you invited me to come to your home, and I was happy to do so. I was enthused by your candidacy. And either you had mentioned it, or I actually probably mentioned it, that there would be people who would say, you haven't lived in town long enough, I think it was a little bit more than a year at the time, to know some of the issues. Well, I gave you an idea that I see backfire. I said, well, just tell people, look who's supporting me, old-timers such as myself and others, and therefore, you know, I'll be a good candidate. I'll keep Sierra Madre's interest at heart. The only thing I want to add to that in terms of what happens to people when they get on the city council, you'll only know how they're going to behave if you've seen them behave before. Once I was sitting at a dining room table after a candidate had been elected. This is on the, about 8 or 10 years ago, so it doesn't apply to any of you. Please don't assume this applies to any of you. And someone said, well, what happened to our candidate? We worked hard. They were in office for 4 years. Re-election was about to come up. And my husband, who has a background in counseling, says they don't know how they're going to act until they get up there because they've never done it before. Only when the people who are here, who have seen what has happened, know how a candidate has acted and behaved and voted. And that's what the people tonight who are in support of Marianne McGillivray are stating. Thank you very much.